I just want to say a couple things about taxation. The main thing, the hang-up seems to be is this belief that taxation is a service charge, basically. It's kind of implied in the whole propaganda. Taxes are the price we pay for a civilized society, right? Taxes are the price we pay. Taxation, however, is considered compulsory. Sure, it's a price. Larkin Rose says taxes are the price you pay for being a bonehead in economics, and that's essentially the case. But taxation is not a service charge, right? Taxes are not service charges that you have contracted for, or signed up for, or that you pay for services rendered or resources that you utilize. Taxation is meant to be paid regardless if you utilize the services, right? Like if taxes all just kind of lumped up into all these things. You're just meant to pay your taxes, and then they funnel it off to whichever service. If you don't have any kids and you don't use the public school system, you're still meant to pay. Of course, then they'll say that there's another part of it, though, is they say you benefit from having educated people around in the society. Of course, all these people come out thinking that political rituals give them the right to demand your wealth. But aside from that, benefit does not incur obligation. The big hang-up in discussions are either roads or protection. I'm talking mostly about protection. National defense, the military, the police. So they basically are saying that you come here and you cannot be excluded from their protection of the general area, right? Basically, is that's the only way that they couldn't possibly exclude us, because that whole area is viewed to be their jurisdiction. That's the wrong perspective, though. It's really a nonsense perspective, because, as I said, benefit does not incur obligation. And what I'll also say is that the state doesn't own the entire area. And even if they did, it wouldn't be any really valid either way. So if I showed up on your street and started walking around with a gun, and I even happened to chase off a criminal who was robbing someone's house, let's say yours, and then after the fact I came and knocked on your door and said that you owed me, obviously that's illegitimate, right? If I delivered you something that you never asked for, if I give you something and then after you take it say, well, you owe me, that's not proper. And if let's say that there was a mugger or a mass murderer, okay, a mass murderer was shooting everybody in the mall or something, and I take him out. Everybody who lived in the mall, essentially, especially in the very close area that he was at, basically benefited by my action, right? Because they were really at risk of being killed right there. But that doesn't mean that they're obligated to then obey me or pay me, right? If I then started saying, okay, everybody needs to give me their number and name because I'm going to be coming to collect, just because they claim that they're protecting the general area, and even at times agents of the state do protect others from criminals, doesn't mean that you're obligated or that you become obligated to pay them. That's not how obligations work. Obligations are freely assumed. So in order for it to be valid, you would have to essentially ask them to protect you. You have to contract with them voluntarily, and they have to agree, and they have to say, okay, but it comes with a charge, and then you guys both agree. And then you go forward, and then if they render services, then you are obligated to pay them. You have freely assumed this obligation, so you do owe them. And likewise, they owe you to make good on their contract. And if they breach it, there might be liability, or if they fail to uphold it, then there may be liability stipulated. At the very least, cancellation is possible. And the whole concept of government is you can't cancel, and that it's compulsory to begin with. And the issue of being compulsory raises the issue of jurisdiction and ownership. If the state has the right to impose compulsory dues or taxes, then it essentially implies that they own the entire territory, right? Which is also, it's implied also by the fact that they say that they're patrolling this area. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to, is an act of ownership. Well, we're running around protecting the peaceful people from the heathens, basically, and is how they view it, more or less. And you're benefiting just by being here, so you owe us. Doesn't make any sense. Makes no more sense than if the mafia does that, which, of course, they do at times. So, but the concept of ownership comes into play with property taxes and just the whole thing in general, where what right do they have to impose compulsory dues anyway? I use the example of, say, Disneyland. If you want to get into Disneyland and you want to utilize the services, then you got to pay, right? Right. Well, we understand that, and we understand market transactions for the most part, even if an individual is not analyzing it all from that economic perspective or even a political, philosophical perspective. We all kind of understand that we got to pay to get someone's services if that's what the deal is. Statism, it would be like as if Disneyland went to everybody's house and said they had to pay for the roller coasters whether they wanted them or not, and so if you want to get into America Land, you got to pay because they're going to use the services and stuff. Or it would be as if Disneyland first of all claimed a monopoly on making roller coasters and then made roller coasters everywhere, and that was just due to their monopoly position, how everybody got around by roller coaster. And now even if you live here, if you don't want to use the roller coasters or you never asked for it, it just becomes that you're going to end up using it, so you have to pay initially, which is not actually how it comes about. But that's just maybe how I think it seems like it's working in the statist's mind. Of course, how it comes about is the state just declares itself the ruler, the rightful ruler, and imposes taxes. And basically gets a lot of people to believe it, or everybody believes it initially, and then they propose and perpetuate and enact this concept of government, of state. So, but yeah, benefit doesn't incur obligation. So even if you do protect me, I don't have to pay you unless I freely contract. And at that point they'll say, well, you know that you're meant to pay for being here, so that's your consent. That's like implied consent, which again that follows into the Disneyland example, because that basically implies that they have the right to do that, to impose these dues, and that they own the land. So we're all tenants to the state, which is what it boils down to. And anarchists and libertarians, we figured all this out. We see that, but it's still tricky. The statists, some of them don't see it at all. Some of them truly believe that taxes are service charges, and there just doesn't seem to be any getting through to them. But ultimately, they're not. I mean, the state is not, at the same time, the state is not obligated to render any services to you whatsoever. The state is not obligated to protect you. The Supreme Court rules this consistently, that police have no obligation to protect anyone, and just the entire concept that the state would be obligated to pay to protect you because it demands that you pay for its protection is ridiculous. It's like saying that Al Capone is obligated to pay it's like saying Al Capone is obligated to protect the people that he extorted. Or the mafia or whoever. The mafia shows up and says, you're going to pay us for our protection or else we're not going to protect you from us. We're going to smash up your shop and take your stuff. And then the guy pays, and then it's like saying that he has some kind of... he has a claim that he's being extorted, but it's to say that as if the extortionist is actually obligated to protect him. That's kind of a bizarre twist on justice, because we've already jumped the fact that the guy's extorting him in the first place. So he's obviously not under any obligation to protect him. He's already broken his moral obligation of not ruling others and not initiating force and things. So it's just an absurd idea. Taxes are not service charges. It's just extortion by another name, and perceived to be different by people who believe in authority, which is basically that group, government, whoever, the state, has the right to rule. So they view that the state has the right to impose compulsory dues, which implies that they own the entire area, which is what it boils down to. That's what jurisdiction ends up meaning, essentially. Even though it's a nonsense political propaganda term for the most part, you basically be fair in saying that your property, your rightful property, is your jurisdiction. And that's what it boils down to, right? If we think about this and we look out there and how the state operates and how government operates, or whatever you want to call it, we see that's the case. They make all the rules. They boss everyone around in the area. They demand that you pay for their services whether you want them or not. Taxes are not service charges. It's just extortion. And even if they were service charges, benefit does not incur obligation. So if you protect me of your own accord and I never asked you to, I'm not obligated to pay you. Just flip the situation. If I protected you and you never asked me to, and then I said, now you owe me $50 or else, and then I go and you say no, and then I steal the $50 from you, I'm still stealing the $50 from you. You don't actually owe me $50, right? Benefit does not incur obligation. That's about it. 10 minutes. Taxation, it's theft. Plain out theft.